Welcome back to LUTE Labs. So far we've covered the nodes. There are three types, how they connect, and how to trigger them. But let's stop looking at the individual pieces and build something more complete. We'll build a complete small game from start to finish without any location. We will plan it out on the flow engine. We'll create the nodes and we'll connect them together with choices and we'll playtest both paths. For now, let's jump into the editor. Okay, so we are back in the Unity editor with our basic scene open. Before touching in the flow engine and actually building your game, we find it is useful to sketch out the shape of what you're building on paper, in your head, or even using a digital tool that you prefer using to sketch out stories and game narratives. Then you can use the flow engine to further map out the game using nodes. In our case, it's very simple. We have an introduction, followed by some information, and then a question is proposed to the player, in which they have two choices, which either lead to outcome A or outcome B. So let's start with our introduction. We'll add a dialog order, in which we'll go to the node, to the order list, and press the Add New Order button. We'll search for dialog. We'll use our hippo character, and we'll just introduce the player to the game. We'll just say hello and welcome to the game. Okay. There are two options here that we are looking at for the dialog, which you haven't mentioned before. The first is fade when done. What fade when done actually does is fades the dialog box out once it's finished being used. So we want to hide this so we can move on to the next dialog box without this getting in the way. So we'll tick this and then wait for click. Essentially ensures that the player progresses only when they click. Otherwise, what happens is the dialog box finishes writing and then it moves on to the next order automatically. So this gives the player ample time to read it, then click to make sure they progress without having to be rushed. Okay. So next, we want to actually go on to the question node. So again, we'll add a new order, and we'll type next node. So we'll move on to the question node here, just by simply choosing the target node for next node as question. Okay. So this looks like a great start. However, this node won't be executed at all during runtime. So let's make sure we fix that. Let's go over to the node inspector and change the activate by field to game started. So right now, the game starts, this node is fired. Some introduction text appears, and we move on to the question node. So on the question node, we're going to do two different types of dialogue. One is going to give some information about the question we will propose to the player, and in the second type of dialogue, the second dialogue order will actually pose the question to the player. Okay, so let's start by adding some dialogue. Okay, we're going to use our hippo character to give the text out, and we're going to ask a question about a galaxy that we live in. Okay, so we'll give some hints to that. We'll say, I love living in a spiral galaxy. I love that it is named after a famous chocolate. Okay, and in this case, we're going to wait for click so the player can click to progress. And then when they progress, we're going to add another dialogue in which we propose a question. And we'll say, this is posed by Dr. Hippo. And we'll say, what galaxy do we live in? Okay. And in this case, we will make sure that fade when done is again not true. So the dialog box still appears, so the question will always be shown with the two choices, so the player knows exactly what the question is and what the choices are. Okay, so let's add the choices. We'll again add the order button, search for choice, and we'll use narrative/choice. So there's two choices we'll offer. First being the correct answer, which is the Milky Way galaxy. And if we get that right, we'll go to outcome B, the correct answer. So we'll go to outcome B. Now we could just simply duplicate this order by using the duplicate button here, and we'll change the text to something like the banana galaxy, so something which is really obviously incorrect, and that goes to outcome A. Okay, and this is exactly what the branching node example from the connecting node episode was discussing. Once you add that second choice, you can see the node turning into a hexagonal shape to give you a visual representation that this is a node, a node which has multiple choices on it. Okay, so let's go to those correct and incorrect nodes. All right, first we'll go to the incorrect one, and we'll say, and another dialog, and we'll call this from hippo incorrect. Try again if you like. Okay, now here's where things get really cool. You can restart this whole process without actually ever leaving runtime. All right, so what we'll do is add a next node order, and the target node will be the introduction. So we're looping back to the beginning of our game. Let's do the same for the correct answer. Let's add a dialog here. Again, we'll use our hippo character, and we'll say correct. Have another go if you like. Okay, and then we'll add the next node order. Sure, it goes back to the introduction. Now, it's important here that we discuss one more field on the node itself. So if I click on any node, you can see that there is a repeatable field here. Okay, it's a tick box. And what this means is that this node can be executed more than once during runtime. So in this case, if we had called this wouldn't be called, because if this was false, it would say I've played once, therefore I can't be played again. But by allowing every node in this scene to be repeatable, this whole process can be repeated infinite amount of times. Okay, so let's jump into runtime and play the game and see what happens. All right. Here we go. So the game starts. We can see our .hippo character has introduced us to the game, and it's waiting for click. And when we click, it goes into the next node here, in which we give our little hint about the spiral galaxy and being named after some famous chocolate. We then again wait for click, and it comes up saying, what galaxy do you live in? Then we click. And because we have ensured this doesn't fade when done, we can see the question and the choices. So let's choose the correct one for now. And again, this plays because we got it correct. Now, if we then click, the game restarts again. Okay, and we simply go through it again, and we can choose the incorrect answer, and that leads back to our incorrect node. If we click again, we can restart. So this just gives you an introduction on all the concepts we've previously introduced and tying them all together. So there we go. 2 different playthroughs, 2 different experiences by only using 4 nodes. That's everything we've covered so far. Bind it together in one place. Next up, we'll actually take that question node to remember things by using variables and conditions. Thanks for watching with LUTE Labs, and we'll see you there.